I'm not sure that we have the actual empirical evidence to say that that once you get your PhD that you don't develop lifelong collaborations, right? I think it's probably really varied. I think some people hold on to some of those relationships that they formed during their PhDs, and some people don't. But I will say, I can certainly understand why some people are reticent to hold on to those relationships, because some of those relationships may have been really unproductive, very difficult, very emotionally challenging, right? There's a lot of power dynamics in the academy. And I know from mentoring dozens of doctoral students that some advisors are really fantastic and some advisors are not. Some advisors give their students a lot of agency, but also direction. And some people, sort of create really toxic, dependent relationships where grad students feel constantly beat down and never really they're contributing. And that can feel really icky. Why would you want to maintain a relationship with somebody who kind of berated you, constantly? Even if maybe they had good intentions to try to get you to think better and to be your best self, it doesn't feel good, right? To cultivate or to hold on to a relationship in which you feel really emotionally scarred by. And so, for sure, there are. Those are some of the reasons I think people wouldn't hold on to those relationships. And I think other people, I do try to encourage people, don't be dependent on your advisor. Really try to have a team of people who are supporting you. When I was in grad school, my advisor was amazing in many ways. And there were ways in which he wasn't really helpful to me. And so I reached out to other professors. I also reached out to a lot of professors who are emeriti or emeritus status, because they really wanted to engage with students. They were kind of at the part of their career where their legacy is what they're able to pass down to next generations. And so I had coffee with several professors who were in their 80s and their 90s. Wow. And they would read my work and they would give me feedback, and they were such amazing sources of wisdom. And I didn't have those kinds of those power dynamics weren't there in a way, because they had nothing to prove and they had a lot of time for me. So yeah, my advice to people is if your relationship with your advisor is not working out, make sure you are really diversifying the people who are on your team. Yes. And hopefully those relationships will carry on as you pursue your career, regardless of whether you stay in academia or not.
Hello, students and graduates. Welcome to PhD Lounge, the podcast of late-night talks in which PhDs have a drink and talk about their research topics. I'm your host, Luis, and following the successful late-night talk with Elena Hofer, I also bring to you another fantastic talk with another guest. First things first, I want to thank you once again for being a valuable listener to the PhD Lounge podcast and for having interest in the content that I record, speak, edit, and share across every podcast platform of your preference and on my social media accounts, whether as a solo speaker or with the company of another PhD. The reason I'm saying this at the beginning of this session is that back on the 4th of July, I received an email from the founder of Million Podcasts, who created lists ranking the best podcasts in their category. Turns out that PhD Lounge is placed amongst the top 35 most listened podcasts in the category of podcasts around the culture and universe of the PhD, top 15 on thesis writing podcasts and top 40 graduates podcasts list. Upon receiving this email with happiness for achieving such milestones, it means that my content is worth tuning in, and obviously, more innovative work and ideas must be at the front in order to increase the experience of PhD Lounge, so that you can interact more often according to what you're keen to listen to. And so, you have my gratitude as I keep learning about this world of the podcast industry, adding more experience not just for professional reasons in terms of obtaining and polish new skills, but also telling something to my family, friends, and to you, the listener, what I do to leave a legacy and being an example for the next generations. Thank you very much for being part of the PhD Lounge. That being said, I now turn to introduce another fantastic late night talk. I'm going one-on-one with a PhD who has a master's in law in Harvard and didn't take one but 2 PhDs in the same field after successfully applying for scholarships, grants, and fellowships with a success rate of 2.9% for more than a decade in competitive universities. This guest is also a 2-time published author, and whilst studying in Russia, Germany, US, and Italy, the guest's motto is firmly believing that accessible, quality education is everyone's birthright. The guest has also worked for the Permanent Court of Arbitration, transitioned from practicing law to academia, secured 4 postdoctoral offers, including from the Swiss government, and served as an admissions evaluator for the LLM and PhD programs. This whole experience of this guest led to career option diversification and opened new doors to other ventures, including having an online business to help masters and PhDs to write successful applications for scholarships, learning languages, and writing to enter into the most competitive universities and secure competitive funding, as well as media appearances and awards. So please, students and graduates, grab yourselves a drink, have a seat, and get ready to tune into my one-on-one late night talk with Daria Levina. Daria Levina, welcome to PhD Lounge, and thank you for reaching me out in order to be my guest, and we're finally here. So how are you feeling today?
Yeah, hi, and thank you so much for hosting me. It is a pleasure to share my knowledge and expertise. Yes, I'm very excited.
No, thank you very much. And I've checked your website several times in order to construct the questions all around here, and you can see there's a huge life story around that, and to what you currently do, your passion for accessible education, and I would like to know how your academic background led for you to complete 2 PhD dissertations, a massive feat, and having 10 plus years of academic education, and how it led for your applying for one of the most competitive funding ever, the European Fund in Florence.
Yeah, sure. So I will do my best not to occupy an hour or so, but be very succinct.
Sure.
And so essentially when I was a high school student, very long time ago. I participated in a type of competitions that we call Olympiads, and I studied in Russia, and we had Olympiads in pretty much every single high school subject.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really liked studying, because for me, like, just school and studying was this part of my world that was stable and predictable, and it gave me the feeling of intellectual realization and competence. And so I tried out myself in multiple Olympiads, mostly social sciences, and I was really good at a few of them, but especially law. We had law as well, because some high schools, they had introduction to law as part of the curriculum. And so I won first the district level, then the regional level, and then the final national level of the competition. And when you do that, you get a chance to be accepted to the university, according to this discipline in which you won the competition. For instance, like for law, it would be law faculty, and you're exempt from any entrance exams. And that was my first exposure to law. I didn't have any relatives or acquaintances who did that. It was just this competition, and that's how I ended up doing my first law degree. And I just really, really enjoyed it. I was super idealistic, probably more than it is allowed for a lawyer.
How often those Olympiads occur? Is it annually, biannually?
They are annual.
Annual.
Yes, and usually you have district level in fall, then regionals in winter, and in spring is when the federal stage takes place once a year.
Sure.
And I did that 3 years, like from grade 9 to 11.
Also consecutively.
Yes.
In a row.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very hard, but also I just really enjoyed that world of abstract concepts. And when I finished my first law degree, I sort of because I already knew just how much I liked law, it was sort of natural for me to pursue it in all different forms. So I started working in a law firm, but I also enrolled in a PhD program at the same university, which was like the Lomonosov Moscow State University. And at some point, like, I've been doing those things in parallel, and I realized that I really wanted to pursue a full degree abroad. I knew a few people who did that. They did Master of Laws. I didn't know at that time anyone who did a PhD, like a full PhD in a different country. And so I decided to researching and applying. And it took me 2 years because the first year I applied to Europe, to 3 universities in Europe, and I applied for specialized programs, and I had admission offer from Cambridge, but with no funding. And I had admission offer and a full scholarship from a program, it's like specialized program in international arbitration in Switzerland.
Yes.
And by the time I already decided that I did not want to do international arbitration, like between the time I applied and the time I got their response, like my vision for what I wanted to do in the future changed so much that I didn't want to I didn't want to practice arbitration anymore. And so I decided to reapply. And next year I applied to the US. And the reason for this change was that I did shorter-term programs in multiple European countries on scholarships. Like ever since I started my law journey, and I felt like I understood a lot about how law in European countries worked.
Sure.
And I was looking for something that would just literally turn my world upside down. and just give me such new and different inputs that it would change how I thought about my role as a lawyer and what I want to do. And so I got into Harvard. And I managed to secure funding. I needed $92,000, and I managed to raise it through scholarships. I had about $60,000 in scholarships, and then I had very little savings, but whatever I had, I invested as well. And then I crowdfunded half of my tuition. And that was a very crazy idea, but I was sort of stuck looking for funding, and I just I think probably due to the fact that I grew up in a post-communist society, I just couldn't understand how you could be limited in your access to education just because of money. Like, it just did not compute in my brain.
It was really interesting that you spoke about crowdfunding, because it's an idea that no PhD has in the idea of getting crowdfunding. It was I was baffled now from what you said. It's crowdfunding. Never thought about that, and trying to apply for funding via funds from the crowd. how that idea just came to
Good question.
To a good outcome.
It's a very good question. And so I remember that I've been looking for scholarships, and I applied for everything I saw. The problem is just master's programs, especially in social sciences, they're just not very well funded.
Yes.
Especially in the US.
Limitations. Yeah, there are several limitations in what comes to funding for arts and humanities. And so, well. Exactly.
And so at some point I reached a point where I couldn't find any useful information on scholarships, and I remember I just Googled something like, what do you do if you don't have money to study in the US? And so I found a story of a British student who crowdfunded for her Master of Science at Oxford. And at the time I thought, well, this is crazy. I'm not going to do this. And then in about 2 weeks, I thought, this is crazy. I'm going to do it.
Yes. And then, so how did you manage to do it? How did you leverage that crowdfunding successfully?
So I did a lot of work, and there were just two parts to it. First was I researched as many crowdfunding campaigns as I could, especially like related to what I was doing, like education related, because like I wasn't the first person in the world to do that. So there were examples, and I studied them, and then I wrote a text for the campaign. I made a video just explaining who I am and what I do, and just uploading necessary documents like this is the Harvard offer. Like, I'm not just like, it's not just a scheme, you know.
Yes.
So I also devised offers, what I could offer to people, because psychologically it is very, very hard to raise money for your personal project.
Yes.
It was so hard, and the only thing that allowed me to do that was that I just decided that I will try it, not with the expectation to actually raise the money, but to just be able to tell myself that if I can't do this master's, then, well, it's not my fault because I did everything I could. And so I did all this preparatory work and launched the campaign. And then I just did so much work to promote it and post everywhere I could, like on all the lawyer and like social science forums and like Facebook groups. At the time, people still used Facebook. And just a second. And I reached out to everyone with whom I've had a single positive interaction in my life. And I asked people for different things. Like maybe you could just share my campaign on social media, or if maybe if the message resonates with you, would you consider donating? And so I invested a lot of time in relationship building.
Sure.
And I made everything to make sure that like I don't treat donations as that I don't take them for granted, that I actually appreciate everyone who comes in contact with me in my campaign. And at some point, I think at the time, like I was raising 27,000. That was what I needed. And at some point, I think at about 8,000 mark, I reached out to my PhD supervisor, and I asked him to spread it to his network, because he's a very esteemed scholar. He has a large network, and someone in his network from an NGO, like a small educational NGO, they decided to fund the rest of the campaign, which was 18,000. And so that's how I closed it, and it took me about a month and a half
to prepare everything,
to prepare and promote, and just from the start to the closure.
Wow. And then it ended up being above of the required amount to pay the tuition fees.
No, it was exactly exactly what I needed. Yes,
exactly what you needed, and that's a massive story. I never expected that that crowdfunding would be a solution to apply for funding and in order to pay tuition fees, amenities, etc. But that is how to say, that is an outside of the box way to, in order to further their studies, specifically in PhD. It is something that, for me, honestly, I never thought about it. And if I would know that several years ago when I started my PhD, then I would try and dare myself to apply to promote myself in order to obtain funds from different people. It's just such a fantastic feat, and that's one of the things that you've mentioned was building relationships, building a network around it. And that's something that is, I've talked a few days ago with another guest at the podcast, that in order to be where you're at, you must have a solid network. You must introduce yourself, to present yourself. And you said it well. How hard it is for PhDs to build their own network in order to achieve what they actually want.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Well, as I tend to see it, the whole point of a presentation is to make your audience see something that they didn't see before, right? And hopefully in a profound way, because if it's just an easy announcement that's not difficult to explain, why not just send a simple email or write a short memo about it? So the whole point of making a presentation or preparing a larger piece of communication is to make your audience see something that they didn't see before. And that means that means a couple of steps that are immediately derived from that. First of all, you need clarity about what is that actually? What do I need them to see? And you'd be surprised to learn how few people, not exclusively, but particularly in the science community, wouldn't be able to say that, to give a concise answer to that. So what is it that you actually want your audience to see? So, and once you've nailed that or have clarity for yourself what that is, you can ask the second question. So why don't they see it already? What do they see? What do they see that I don't? And what do they miss that I see already? And once you have that, you can kind of build a path between those 2 points. And the ultimate goal of a presentation is to lead them to what I would call the point of no return, which would probably coincide with that aha moment where you've told them everything that helps them really see what you wanted to make them see, where there is no coming back, no going back for them, because they've seen it in a way that they cannot unsee it anymore, and where it makes total sense because you've explained it in a way that makes sense, using words that they can understand, using images and metaphors that they are familiar with.
Yes, something that is more exactly. It's more something that they are more familiar with, something that is more common as they've seen, whether on TV or on YouTube. Something, in a sense, it's more of a touristic point of view. It's kind of like when they go to an event, they're attending a speaker, and you feel like I'm a tourist here, and I want to hear what you have to say. And then something comes up, and they say something that sparks them, and I say, "Aha! That's what I want to know." And so basically,
and that is a that is a great approach, and that is so starkly different to what most people do. So most people, when I ask them how they would go about preparing a presentation, they tell me similar things. They first of all, they start with a presentation that they've already given a couple of weeks ago, and then they fill up all the other details that have come up since, and so until they discover, whoa, that's way too much information for 25 minutes. And then they start cutting, and it's still too much. And so basically they have that problem of overwhelming their audience because there are so many things that are interesting and great and fascinating about my field, which makes sense. I mean, you're doing a PhD about it. You're researching 5 years on it. Of course, there's more interesting things to say about it than you've got time to say it.
Yes.
But that approach that you've outlined is a very different approach, where you basically turn that upside down and you don't even bother about all the things that you can say, but only ask yourself, what is that one thing that makes that tourist look over, come closer, and think to themselves, well, that is interesting. I want to know more about that.
Sure.
And so getting clarity and starting there. So what is that one thing? And often it's really literally one thing only.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on your, like, where you are on your field. There are so many specifics, but I think a good part about the PhD stage is that you can go to conferences or you can find scholars in your field and ask for their support, and so they're just there are more like points of connection, I would say, than, for instance, when you are trying to make it in the industry, because there are names you might know, or there are people you will naturally gravitate towards.
Yes.
And I think there is just I can't assess the level of difficulty, but I would say that it is for me, academically, I would say it's been easier to build a network than when I was worked as a lawyer, because with academics, I found that there is just there is no, people don't have this habit to do networking just for the purpose of networking. Whenever I reach out to an academic, I usually meet a lot of warmth and support, and I think there is just this sense of camaraderie that is inherent, and it is more difficult to build it in the industry, at least in my experience. Not impossible, but still more difficult. So I think That's actually one of the advantages of academia, that it allows you to build just very meaningful relationships.
Yes, and I agree on that point as well, because nowadays we see, obviously, the current marketplace is quite difficult at the moment for either as academic and non-academic jobs, but yet I think there's this bit of not saying phobia to an extent of the academia is overflown, is saturated. You're not going over there because there's plenty of people that they don't want to take their place out. But from what you're saying, that there's still a possibility to get into academia in few years' time, unless if having a solid network, as you said. So, do you have any thoughts on many people saying the academia is a completely dark place and you're not getting anywhere unless you go for industry? There's this bit of clash online. Don't know if you have noticed.
I did, yes. I mean, on the one hand, it is true.
Yes.
I think that at the moment there are more fully funded PhDs than there used to be, but there is still not as many post-PhD positions to match the supply of PhD graduates. So that's one of the problems.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I think it is something that I hear a lot from many fields, that this idea that the market is saturated. I think I've heard that from so many different people. And I think a lot of the success in terms of whether you will be able to build a career in academia or not, it depends on your strategy. Because, for instance, even in this market, I know that the university where I did my PhD, like the second one, the European University Institute in Florence, it has a very high employability rate. For people who actually want to stay in academia, they usually find how to stay. And I think that just applies to every field, whether it's saturated or not.
Sure. What's the percentage rate of admission?
The admission.
Yes, if you have any thoughts if you know.
Yes, so for the EUI specifically,
yes,
it is different because so EUI, just for our listeners, it's it's a very peculiar place, at the heart of Florence, and it's a university that was founded by the EU member states in the 70s, and for most part, it's been just PhDs. Now it has master's programs as well. But mostly it's a cluster for PhD research in 4 disciplines: law, economics, social science, and history. And because it was founded by the EU member states, the EU member states provide funding. And so when you apply, you also automatically apply for a grant. And the degree of admission will depend on the grant you're applying for. Because there are highly competitive grants, like the grant of the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because it's essentially for people who are from non-EU. And
Sure.
And there are only 4 or 5 grants per year, and about 200 applicants.
Sure.
But then, for instance, there is a Danish grant, which has very little competition. Or there is a German grant, which has higher competition, but Germany funds so many grants that is still much lower. And for instance, it can be like 1 to 4 people.
Sure.
So it really depends on the grant you will be applying for. But it's definitely not impossible to get in.
So it is possible to enter, but then, as you said, it depends on the type of grant. So if we speaking about a grant which likely requires a topic that could, revolutionize the world, would that be more competition than the other grant in another field that is less competitive to some extent?
So the research proposal at this stage, it matters a lot, but again, it really depends on a number of factors. And the first one is your nationality, because that determines your eligibility for a grant. And at the point of admission, it is rarely a topic that will revolutionize something. It just needs to be a good topic.
Sure. Okay. Good topic. But why the nationality then? Do they give more priorities to the
No,
to
because
the students who have?
Because as I mentioned, that's how the university works.
That's how it works then.
The grants are only national.
Sure.
For instance, someone with a Portuguese passport can only apply for a Portuguese grant.
Okay. So now I get it. No, it's okay. So understandable now. I mean, so in this case, then, although being possible, the competition still it is real, because someone who's come from Portugal is not able to apply for a Spanish grant, from what I understood. But then there's also those opportunities. I'd say that if Portugal has a research and requires some grant from the EU, or has to be specifically Portuguese, then there's a higher chance for them to apply for it with a good proposition then, right?
So governments do not have involvement into what kind of research gets funded. The university consults with them. Because the selection process is multi-stage, and first there is a pre-selection based on documents, then there are interviews, and then the university submits the names of the candidates to the National Granting Authority.
Yes.
But there is no correlation between the research that a particular government or a country needs and what actually gets funded, because the applicants decide themselves what they will research.
Sure.
However, your question did remind me of how, well before I started my PhD there, I've been told that EUI invited the Russian government to also participate and give grants to Russian students. And they refused because they wanted to control what gets researched. And the university said, no, you can't do that. We don't allow that to anyone.
Sure.
And therefore, and there is no specific grant for Russian students. I had to apply for the Italian grant, which has like a 2% success rate, because there are just so many people applying.
Sure. The higher the applicants, the less is the admission then.
Yes, but your question, yes, it was really on point. So I'm very happy that we covered that.
So, and then from this conversation that we're having, because this is also newsflash to me, I've never known about the European Institution Fund. If there was a university in Florence in regards to that matter, I only know about the Fine Arts Institute in Florence, by the way. But from what has been said here, what key takes then can PhDs in postdocs as well, in law or or the research field, can learn from you and then adapt their application model when require your business Harvard state of mind, which you can add as well. How did you establish it? So 2 questions in a big sentence.
Yeah, I would actually take them one by one because they're very different.
Yes, they are totally different.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with the first one. And so generally when you're applying for a PhD, there are PhD programs that require you to submit a research proposal.
Yes.
And there are PhD programs that don't require. And I have more expertise with the former, where someone needs to develop a research proposal. And there, what I see most often, both as a consultant, because I consult on master's and PhD applications, and also as a member of the admissions committee, because I was during my time as a PhD student part of the selection procedure. It's very important to be clear on the problem you want to solve, and I feel that a lot of applicants, they miss that, and it's just important that you do need to read a lot of literature and cite some of that literature when you write research proposal, but at the end of the day, it's the real world problem that you need to present, that actually needs to be solved. And literature is just how scholars deal with that. But literature is not the end in itself. And I feel like when I read some of the research proposals, applicants forget about that. And just you need to be really, really clear on what it is that you want to achieve, like what pressing problem your research will be solving. And it is also important to, first of all, demonstrate the consequences of that problem not being solved. Like what damage is being done in the world because this problem exists and no one is solving this, and why your research is going to fill that gap.
Sure.
I think that's really important, and that gets missed very often. And I would say that part number 2 is just let me check my.
Just before you saying how did you establish the Harvard state of mind? Do you have an episode where you've learned from your failure and trying to apply for grant, or was it smooth sailing?
Well, genuinely in academia, like you need to be prepared to deal a lot with failure.
Yes,
and that's just something that is just part of the field, and I do have my share of failures. I would say that what I've just mentioned, that was actually really important for me, because like a lot of people in research, I do get sometimes just lost in all the literature, and it's been a learning process for me to just to see like what is the real world impact of my research will be, like not just what's going to change in the literature if I publish an article, because publishing an article is never like the end goal. The end goal is to make the world a better place, right?
Yes.
And this is something that I learned, especially from my applications that haven't been successful. And then another lesson that I learned is that in this field, you shouldn't take anything personally.
That's a fact. Yes.
Yes.
And there are many PhDs that I've heard of. They've taken quite personally in being rejected for specific fundings, and even being rejected straight from their proposal, and even being rejected to a sort of probation meeting of a Viva simulation. So where basically here in Swans University we have that. I've been through that. I've passed it, thankfully. But I've heard stories that many PhD students, they went through the preparatory meeting in order whether this student is capable to become a candidate, and there were many rejections, and they didn't take that seriously, and they haven't learned from it. That's one major fact that for us PhDs we're going to have so many setbacks, and that's part of the endurance of becoming PhD graduates.
Yes, and as you mentioned yourself, it is a saturated field, unfortunately.
Yes.
And there's just not going to be enough funding for even brilliant proposals, and it doesn't have anything to do with you. It doesn't have to do with how smart you are.
Yeah.
And I know that for many applications, especially when it comes to grants and postdocs, you will receive feedback, but it will never be feedback about what actually was the reason. It will be feedback that looks good on paper because the selection committee doesn't want you to comment and complain. But I know that seeing this feedback can hurt a lot because you will take it seriously.
Sure.
And it's important to acknowledge whatever it is that you think is valid, but just don't accept it as a measure of yourself and your research.
Yes. No, that's absolutely true. And the only solution to the problem is to, obviously there will be that moment where there will be some sadness and also the fear of being rejected and the fear of failure. But then that would be after a brief moment, that would be something that will keep you motivating to improve what you thought you have failed, and then trying to make it a bit more convincing, not for that funding, PhD funding, but maybe for other fundings, or maybe even trying to go for crowdfunding. That's all the way around. So now we were backing on the question of how did you establish Harvard State of Mind?
Yeah, I mean it's been a long journey.
Yes.
But I would say the first inspiration I got was that when I was doing my first law degree, I was following a lot of social media channels that posted information about grants in different countries, or shorter study abroad opportunities, or stories of people who did that. And there was a lot of demand for that kind of information, especially just in all of the, I would say, all of the post-Soviet countries that I know. Students, I would say, were hungry for those opportunities because it wasn't available. It was new and exciting. And so there was a lot of demand. But I remember that whenever I read information on those channels, it felt that it wasn't meeting the need, because there was usually very little strategy. Like, for instance, if you read someone's story, it can be very emotional. It can have really nice pictures, but it's not going to equip you to do the same or to do what you want for your educational journey. And the same goes, for instance, for information about grants, because grants often have so many bureaucratic eligibility requirements, and you would go through a bunch of them, and you will see that, well, none of it actually applies to me. So there was a lot of sense of disappointment for me. And several years ago, I started sort of naturally first help my friends who wanted to do a degree in a different country, and I repeatedly was hearing from them that my help was really important for them. It helped them get where they wanted to go. And I tried multiple projects. I worked with other people on mentorship programs. I considered a startup in the education field. And so through all of the trial and error, I decided that what works for me is working one-on-one with people. That's one part of what I do. Like I review applications, I give feedback. If needed, I give advice on how to start. And I also write about my own experience or the experience of people that I've guided. And those formats they're the ones that work best for me. And that sort of crystallized about 3 years ago.
No, that's an inspirational story. Then you got for any other one who would like to also to start their own business and then finding solutions for that. And you said yourself as well that there was a problem and then you found a solution around advising your clients to write successful application letters in order to be accepted and admitted for grants. And I also want to add as well that when you established Harvard State of Mind, one of your main things was to get accessible education, right? So when you speak about accessibility, about in terms of securing MA, PhD, and postdoc funding for a better education, and do you have any strategies that you've developed in order to reach such success? And is it adaptable to any of your clients?
Sure. So I also work a lot with master's students.
Sure.
I just want to emphasize it because a lot of writing that I help with, it's not just about the research, but it's also this type of writing where you need to explain your motivation, your background. Like there's a lot of writing that I help with that's about self-analysis, and the methodology. Like I have a methodology to guide people through this type of writing, regardless of where they are in the application process, whether they're just starting out or whether they've done something and then didn't work out. And I think like the technical part of it, like if our listeners are interested, I think they can easily check it out on my website. Yes. For our conversation, I would just say that a lot of it focuses on, first of all, on humanizing the applicant, because what PhD or master's students tend to do is that they tend to write very like formalistic letters, and like letters that usually just repeat their CVs. And a lot of what I do when I come in, like I discuss extensively like their professional decisions, why they did certain things. Like it's a mini interview, like, but we don't but not in the podcast format.
Yes.
Exactly. But like I asked a lot about like the sort of the behavioral part, and all of the things that don't get reflected on a CV, and I help them discover the underlying themes, why they do what they do, and what they like very simply, or why, or what made them who they are. And for everyone, it's different, but that's one part. Yes. And then another part is to actually translate it to the admissions committee, because it's one thing to uncover all those important insights about like the meaning of your life and what you want to do professionally, but a completely different thing is to package it in an application in a way that that is relevant to the program you're applying for, and and that answers the questions of the admissions committees. And so that's a lot of what I do.
Do they also, the admissions committee, do they also look on how humanized in between commas is the letter? So what I'm trying to explain is, as you said, that you've trying to you help your clients to make them letters and application letters more humane possible, without being too formal. Do the admissions committee look at that aspect as well?
Well, it is not like an official criteria, but what they do look for are compelling reasons for why this person wants to pursue a particular degree. And they're just hoping a CV doesn't help. And I can say that this is someone who's been on the admissions committee, because it's just like one of the problems you have as a member of the selection committee is that even when you pre-select candidates and when you filter out people who have very low grades or who have just significant problems on their application, academically speaking, even when you filter those people out, there are still too many candidates that are qualified enough for the place. And so you have to differentiate them somehow. And so what happens is that this is where, like, the personal statement or a statement of purpose, whatever it's called for your particular program, that's where this letter comes in, because this is the only document where the applicant can speak directly to the admissions committee about why this degree is important to them. And that's where this humanizing aspect can play a big part, because it can actually show that, well, this person actually needs this degree to do meaningful work.
Sure. So basically what they are looking is how you will then excel in your studies, but then what you got, how your transferable skills will be applied when you graduate. So they have to go through this whole process of applying, using the application letter in the most humanizing way, as you said, and also professional at the same time, in order to justify in a simple sentence, why should we have you studying a master's, a PhD, or a postdoc?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And so I think that as you said, the competition is high. It's just the only way is for the person to try to study what others have done and trying to replicate that, but in their own way. So that's where you come in trying to help them.
Yeah.
So, but then, so you say then, based on the experience that you had, which was more than 10 years, as I've read also on your website, they also faced the difficulty of applying and securing funding, those main PhDs. And what is the main characteristic that most of them fail at the beginning of their application? We know we spoke about the admissions letter, but is there also something else to add?
Well, at the stage of a PhD, I'd say something that gets overlooked is that it's important, especially if you're submitting research proposal, it's important that your research is also personal. And what do I mean by that? It's that, first of all, it should be clear from your application that you have the expertise that the project requires, and that you have at least a sustained track record of interest in that project or field, not necessarily super in-depth expertise, but at least sustain track of interest, because with a PhD, usually you're also applying for funding, and that's or even if you're not applying for funding, that's a huge investment in you by university, because they will allocate resources to you and your research. And so what they want to understand is that you will be successful in carrying that research out, and showing them that this research is something that you have the capacity to conduct. It's really important. I can give an example to make it clearer. Like, I remember when I was on the admissions committee, we had an application of someone who wanted to research truth commissions in Colombia. And and that person didn't speak Spanish. They didn't research anything about truth commissions before, or no connection to Colombia whatsoever. And that was a huge problem for the professors, because they were just not sure this person will be able to produce high-quality research.
Sure.
So I would say just that's one of the things to pay attention to.
So specifically around what is the context of, in this case, Colombia?
In this case, yes. And your research should be like a combination of your pre-existing expertise and novelty. It's a very fine balance, but that's the one you'll need to strike.
Yes, it's all about also balance and trying to study what you're able to grasp in that sense. And have you given the example of a PhD applicant in studying something that is completely different, that has never known about, of what was the context of, in this case, Colombia or any other country across the world? Maybe that PhD applicant would be fit better to study his or her own country in this case. But I think that in all fairness, that it has to be clear, as you said. And does that apply into most of the fields, or any specifics where there's the majority of PhD applicants?
Well, I can't say. I don't have the capacity or to talk for all of the fields, but this is what I've seen in social sciences, specifically in law.
Sure, and that is acceptable. So, but yeah, and I would say as well that now you said you've done 2 PhDs and you have your own business, and you write blogs, and as well, and I've seen it, and it takes much of our time, and nowadays we require online presence. So I was having this talk a few days ago with my previous guest, and in order to have online presence whilst doing researching and writing the PhD at the same time, we need to know how to market ourselves, how to use the correct keywords to sell ourselves, not to sell, but like to advertise ourselves as PhDs, and including our research, attending conferences, networking, all of this activity that requires more than what we actually do. So we have less free time in that regards. And on the one hand, it is good, and because we are increasing our portfolio, but at the same time it becomes burdensome and a bit exhausting. So did you also face that throughout your PhD? Did you have a method as well in order to overpass these challenges?
I do. Yes, I know that there is this pressure in academia to do that. I don't think it's healthy And I don't think I really don't think that there is enough evidence to prove that if you do all these things, then you will get better results.
Sure.
I think it definitely can be possible, but what brings results in a PhD is, I mean, first of all, your PhD, second, your publications, quality of research, and the relationships you build.
Sure.
And I think if one focuses on that, that should also be enough to build a career.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that visibility or like personal brand like are a must. I think I genuinely have a lot of resistance towards imposing things on people that are not an inherent part of the work that you do.
Sure.
And I really haven't seen correlation that like only people who have a lot of visibility, they get jobs. That I haven't seen evidence of that. And I think I am very lucky that EY does not put an emphasis on that. There is a lot of like when I was doing my PhD, like there was a lot of attention paid to helping you produce the highest quality research you can.
Sure.
And everything else was optional. That being said, I did do a lot of things in parallel to my PhD, but that was just my personal choice and the way I need multiple things, and
Sure.
I need to be able to switch my attention from one thing to another. And I did publish, like during my PhD, I published an article and a book. And in law, usually you do not, like, first of all, it's a book field where people publish books. And it's not just like an article field where the only thing you publish are articles. Law is different. Yes, and that was very hard. But also those projects for like they were welcome for me because I was able to switch my attention from the PhD. Like whenever I was tired of writing my PhD,
Sure.
I would work on a different project, and that was helpful.
What skills did you enhance then in order to complete your 2 PhDs?
Well, something that I was interested in, I've been interested in for a while, is just like a lot of productivity literature that I consumed, and something that resonates with me a lot is there is this planning methodology used in programming, and it's called like agile method of planning. Agile method. Yes, and so the idea is that like instead of planning large projects sequentially, like it's very transferable to PhDs because like so instead of like first like planning your entire thing and then reading everything you need and then writing, you would instead split the project into multiple sub projects, and you would do all those stages like but for each sub project. So you would read, like you would plan a part of your research, and then you would read for that part of research, and then you would write, and then you would review all of that and check in what adjustments are needed, and then plan further. And so you would do that step by step, and I found that that's been just immensely helpful for me because it just alleviated so much of this stress that you have during the PhD, because it's just such a huge project.
Sure.
But because of when I was using this methodology, I never felt like I was working on my PhD as a whole. I always worked on a particular chapter or a particular part of my field work. And that's one. And the other one is that I got really into academic note taking, because at some point I decided that my paper-based note-taking wasn't working as efficiently as I wanted. Sure. And so I came across a note-taking system that was popularized due to German sociologist. His name was Niklas Luhmann. And the system of note-taking is called Zettelkasten, or in German, Zettelkasten. And it's very, very hard to explain it, especially in a podcast. So I'm just going to mention it. Sure. He used paper, so the so-called slip boxes. He would use cards, paper cards, to write down the basics of whatever he was reading about. And then he would he would number all of the cards he had, and then he would think about how this card fits into all of the other cards he has. For instance, he's working on a book and he's reading everything that can potentially help him with this book. And so he's making all those notes, and as he's making those notes, he's making sure that they are connected to each other. So whenever he adds the new note, he writes down, he looks through the notes he already has and notes down what connections he possibly can make. So that's the most basic idea of this note-taking system, and I really liked it, and I implemented it, but in digital form. I used a software called Obsidian. And what you do, essentially you can create, it's like a personal Wikipedia. You create notes that are connected in a non-hierarchical manner through hyperlinks. And that's how I build associations and connections, and that's where I take all of the notes related to my sources. That's been a huge help. I'm sorry it's been so long, but
No, it's really interesting to hear that while we're doing our research, then several we began to develop several methods that may work for us. We can even research a bit of them, but along the way, we're gonna develop them nonetheless, and then applying those for the post PhD. And so those, as you said, the agile and the note-taking system you've taken from Mr. Luhmann into Obsidian, they worked well with you. Do you still use them in your business?
I do. Yes, I do use them.
And then, as you said, sorry. And then one thing I've noticed as well in your business model was that at the end of your offering services, then being admitted is not promised. And even though you help them to prepare amazing forms in order for them to get admitted. And I really love to share that despite how good your application might be, then it might be accepted but it's not promised 100%. As you said a bit this previously, but I also wanted to emphasize once again on this, because even those skills, even with the methods, even with preparing a strong application, it is likely that it might be rejected or accepted. And I want to ask you if you have an episode that you had with one of your clients that was hard to work with following your first call, or even during your first call?
Yeah, so those are actually those are two different questions. I will briefly address all of them. Well, yes, thank you so much for bringing that up. So the reason I point that out on my website is very simple. I'm not the one who is making the decision about whether to admit a person or not, and I find it very important to just be clear about the allocation of responsibility, and that my part is to share everything I know and give as much feedback as I can. But but also like a very important boundary for me is that I don't write applications for people. And ethically, it's just so important to me. And I know that in the admissions consulting world, there are people and companies who cross that boundary, who write for applicants, and it was just very, very important for me to filter people who might expect that right away, like when they're just reading through the basics of my website, they see that I offer a different kind of help. Like I advise, but I don't write for you. So that's why it's on the website. And I definitely have clients after the first call, I decide not to work with them.
Sure.
But it is often for a different reason. And sometimes it's just when someone comes to me with a problem I can't help with. And that's actually, it relates to your question about accessibility, because there are types of accessibility that I can help with. I can help with information. I can help the applicant notice their strengths, and that's actually my favorite thing to do. Just show people how much amazing stuff they've done in their lives, because it's often very hard to see when you're living with your profile. And I can help remove those obstacles like self-esteem or information asymmetry. But there are obstacles that I just I'm not that powerful. Like not yet. For instance, I often get clients who indicate, like when I ask them to fill out a short form, or like when I invite them to a first call, and they tell me that their primary problem is that they don't know how to fund the degree. And there I say that I can help you again with information, but I can't help with this particular obstacle. Like if I could, I would just have a scholarship fund, right?
Yeah.
And I would fund people. And so that's one of the problems that comes up, that when I say that, well, I can't help you solve this problem, so it's not a good idea to work together. And then and then there are people with whom we're just not the right fit. And that can be like for many reasons. Like the first one, like just personality. It's not necessarily that someone will expect me to guarantee the admission, but it's just like I have a call and I see that, I don't know, we don't vibe together, and that's perfectly fine.
Sure. And that happens with everyone. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I think most of the candidates, that, as it is the same thing for funding, most of the candidates are not fit for being admitted into having funding. I can give you my personal example that I've never applied for fundings, and I never got informed about them, basically. And the way I went through my PhD was through getting a student job, basically, and applying for a student loan. I know it has its advantages, but it also has its flaws, because obviously we covered in debt and trying to repay it. alongside interest rates. But in my case, funding wasn't something that was for me on the horizon. I might even try in the near future, who knows, if I want to adventure myself into a postdoc at a later stage. And that's one of the reasons that, as you said, it might not be the fit for that client, or what you're asking is too much.
Yeah, or just not part of my expertise.
Yes, and not part of your expertise. And then another thing that I've noticed as well, that you've appeared in several media interviews, and I had the guts to watch an interview you conducted in Russian, so I needed to do the captions. So yes, I did that. I needed to prepare. I needed to check everything possible to see your interviews. And you also have written your several you also continue to write your blog posts, and also one of your articles on Forbes. And I also recently watched an interview you had with David Mensch from Papa PhD. So yes, me and David, we have a good virtual relationship, and we talk not very often, but sometimes, and talking about podcasting and PhD as well. And I'd like to ask you about how was the experience in being interviewed with David, and what is another question as well. So what is another characteristic that you advocate for PhDs and postdocs when facing uncertainty during their studies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for such dedicated attention.
No, my pleasure.
Answering the first question, first of all, I am really honored that I get to speak about what I do with different people, especially because one of the most amazing parts about appearing on a podcast is that each podcast and each podcast host has a different focus.
Yes.
And so I almost never repeat myself. And that is incredible. And sometimes we just talk about so many different things.
Sure.
And I really, really, I find this opportunity really precious. And I don't have that much video content because I am more of a writer.
Sure.
I might start creating videos in the future, but at the moment, I feel more comfortable with writing, and so podcasts, they give me this opportunity to to show more of myself and to share more of myself with people, which I really value. Mm-hmm. Speaking to the second part of the question, I think we've covered a lot of what I wanted to say. I think
yes.
One of the most important things we talked about is not personalizing. So we've covered that. I'd say if we're speaking about uncertainty and facing uncertainty, it's build a team, a support team. Because I find that even when you do a PhD and you have a community, it is still just so important to invest in your relationships, because a PhD, in many ways, is a solitary journey.
Yes.
And I found that the single most valuable thing, it's going to sound as a cliche, but it was just having amazing people in my life. Because very often also when you do a PhD, you get stuck in your head, and if you have people to support you, even just in my experience, I had so many conversations when I would just feel really stuck. And then I would have a short conversation, and that would just completely change my outlook. Yes, and I would really, I think, I would want to stress that for our listeners.
And I guess that the listeners will well receive that message you're conveying, and say accessibility, but also build a team, construct relationships, and I think this is all PhD is all about as well. I think it's more than research, more than writing, but also creating relationships, doing other things that doesn't occupy much of your time, creating solid businesses as well. Aside, if that's the thing that one of the listeners who are tuning in to this late night talk are making to do it. And I'd like to go back to a question that we've missed at the beginning of the session, but we were speaking about this prior to the recording. That you said you've done stand-up comedy, wasn't it? So, do you still do some stand-up comedy after you've done it after your PhD, but you still do some?
Yes, actually, I started doing stand-up last September.
Oh, okay.
And as a truly academic person, I took a course on stand-up. I started on a very academic note.
Sure.
I actually had a show yesterday.
You did. So what you cover most of it? Is it academic comedy or any other sort of gigs?
I do at the moment, I do it sporadically, I'm not an established comedian or anything. Yes. And I usually, I sign up for open mics, where you come to the show and it's a mix of experienced comedians and of people who are just starting out, and mostly they're trying out jokes, so it can vary. There is a very low bar, it's not a Netflix special. And I talk a lot about things, I talk a lot about housing search. At least in my last set, I had a lot of pain associated with it, so I needed to let it out. I have academic jokes as well. I talk about relationships, navigating life in a different country. So just whatever I'm going through, I turn it into comedy.
Do you have one? If you want to share it. An academic joke.
I had a joke in my previous set where I would start out by saying I am a very academic person, to the point that I sometimes feel like I need to hide how academic I am.
Yes.
And for instance, if I just started a relationship, I start dating someone, I don't tell right away that I have 2 PhDs.
Okay.
And it takes someone very patient to keep asking me questions until I say something like, look, there is no easy way to tell you, but I'm probably way smarter than you are. So that's my one of the jokes about 2 PhDs.
Only those who do PhDs will understand this. So for the listeners, if you want to do a PhD, then Daria is the best person to recommend you to go to attend stand-up comedies and talk about PhDs as well. Over there. You can make up your own joke as well. And go to stand-ups. So let's wrap this up. And I think we had an amazing conversation and a good laugh, which we all need. We all need pretty often when we with all this how busy we are with our own PhDs, and postdocs as well, whoever's taking a postdoc, I'd like to ask you, do you believe that the PhD will be the degree of the future? I always ask this question, most of the times I ask this question to my guests.
I hope not. No, I really hope not. It's like what we've discussed before, for all this pressure to be visible and build a following. I really hope that we will live in a society where people get to do what they enjoy and what aligns the most with what they're good at.
Yeah.
And I hope that for people who don't want to do a PhD, like it's not going to be something that's needed. That and PhD will be still pursued by people who just want to do this for their own reasons.
Yes, I think PhD can be done for many people, but not many of them want to do it. And that's the thing. Do you have any upcoming projects in the future?
Yes. So, first of all, I have several academic projects in the making, because I'm not officially part of an academic institution, but I still need to finish some of the things that I started. And one of them is publishing my PhD as a book. It's something that, at least like if you're a lawyer, you're expected to do that. And I recently got a contract for the book, and so I will be working on that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I hope that I will create more for people who are applying. Because at the moment, the majority of my resources that concern master's programs, and then some of them PhDs and a little bit postdoc. And I really want to create more for those later stages of academic career.
Sure. And any upcoming updates for Harvard State of Mind?
Well, that will be part of that.
That will be part of that.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, because like this umbrella, it's for my consultancy, but also for everything that I write, for the courses I create, and so on.
Amazing. I look forward to know more updates. But in the meantime, where the listeners can follow you.
Yeah, well, I have a website. It's as you mentioned, harvardstateofmind.com. I also write on LinkedIn, and you can find me by my name there. I also I barely started a YouTube channel. It's also called Harvard State of Mind, and it's very tiny, and I am nowhere near being at the production quality of professional YouTubers, but I decided that I would like to try and see what happens. So you can follow me there. Please don't judge very hard.
Otherwise, you get comedy upon you. So that's a wrap up. But I want to say, Daria, thank you so much for having the time to be at the PhD Lounge, and I look forward for hearing more about you. I still want to connect with you in the future, and I look forward for any updates. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for hosting me. It's been such a huge pleasure.
Thank you so much. And that's the end of this amazing late night talk with Daria, with incredible insights about her PhD experience and her current work in order for everyone to have accessible and quality education. Obviously, as it happens with every student, not everything in accessible and quality education is a sea of roses, as you must understand this territory when experiencing setbacks and feelings of burnout and disappointment. Furthermore, Daria has great positive testimonials, and she can help you to increase your chances of being accepted at top-tier universities, but can't write proposals and grants for you. It is up to you to take that initiative, and persistence wins everything if you have a great team. While you tune in to my talk with Daria, you can check her website, harvardstateofmind.com, and contact via Telegram, YouTube, and LinkedIn channels. Harvard State of Mind. Every link will be on the show notes. I shall share this late night talk soon on your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you have enjoyed my other talks and solo sessions, then you can check out my website, phdlounge.co.uk, where you can also follow my socials, Instagram at PhDLMF, and my LinkedIn, Luis Maia, and other tabs of the website. Last but not least, if you're a current PhD, post-PhD, or a postdoc and would love to be featured, then either drop me an email at luisphdlounge@gmail.com or on my social media accounts. Thank you all for tuning in. It has been a pleasure.